It is 2 o'clock in the morning on June 22nd, 1994. The air in Oak Haven, Oregon, is so thick with humidity you can almost taste the copper. Inside a dark kitchen, a 17-year-old girl named Chloe Sterling is crawling across the linoleum. She is gasping, her lungs struggling, her fingers slick with something far thicker than the rainwater dripping from her hair. She reaches for the wall-mounted rotary phone. Her shaking hand fumbles with the dial. She isn't calling the police. In the middle of the greatest terror of her life, she dials a number she has known since the 2nd grade. She is calling her best friend across the street. She is calling for Elena. But as the phone on the other side of the street begins to ring in an empty house, Chloe hears a floorboard creak behind her. She turns. Standing in the doorway is a shadow drenched in black, holding a utility knife. And that's when Chloe realizes the most devastating truth of all. The person she is calling to save her is the person holding the blade. Welcome to the Justice Minute. Today, we are diving into a case that redefined the word betrayal for an entire generation. This is the story of Elena Vance and the Sterling twins, a story of a friendship that became a funeral. Before we get into the heat of that 1994 summer, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city and state in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what happens when the third twin finally decides she's had enough of the shadows. To understand the murders of Chloe and Maya Sterling, you have to understand the geography of their lives. In 1994, Oak Haven was a town that felt like a movie set. Manicured lawns, high school football stars, and a sense of safety that was almost suffocating. At the center of it all were the Sterlings. Chloe and Maya were identical in every way that mattered. They had the kind of blonde, athletic grace that made people stop and stare. They were the sun around which the rest of the high school orbited. And then there was Elena Vance. Elena lived in the smaller, grey house directly across the street. If the Sterlings were the sun, Elena was the moon, only visible because of the light they reflected onto her. She wore their hand-me-down Guess jeans. She used their discarded perfume. She was in the background of every single birthday video, every Christmas morning, every graduation photo. To the outside world, they were an inseparable trio, the three musketeers of the grunge era. But beneath the surface, the 1994 heat waves were cooking up something much darker. Elena didn't just want to be with the twins, she wanted to be them. She spent hours in her bedroom practicing Maya's walk. She filled notebooks with copies of Chloe's signature. She was a girl without a face, wearing the masks of her two best friends. But as the school year wound down, the Golden Twins started to do something Elena never prepared for. They started to grow up. They were 18. They were looking at colleges in Oregon and Washington. They were talking about boyfriends and road trips that didn't include the girl from across the street. For Elena, this wasn't just a change of plans. It was an existential threat. If the twins left, who would she be? She was a shadow, and a shadow cannot exist without something to cast it. The breaking point happened in early June. Chloe and Maya had bought a small micro-cassette recorder to practice their valedictorian speech. They thought they were being private. They didn't know that Elena had found a way to listen through the shared ventilation ducts of their old houses, or that she had slipped into their mudroom while they were at practice. The tape was found much later, but the words on it set the stage for the carnage. "We have to tell her soon," Maya's voice whispered on the recording. "We can't just leave for college and let her follow us. It's getting weird, Chloe. She's starting to dress exactly like you. She's suffocating us." Chloe's response was a heavy sigh. "I know. We'll tell her after the party on the 22nd. We'll tell her it's time for us to go our separate ways." Elena Vance heard those words. She heard the two people she worshipped discussing her like a social disease that needed to be cured. In her mind, she wasn't the problem. They were the ones who were breaking the contract. She didn't get angry, not in the way normal teenagers do. She didn't scream or slam doors. Instead, she went to her father's toolbox in the garage and took a heavy, black-handled utility knife. She went back to her room, put on her headphones, and listened to the same song on repeat for 4 hours while she watched the Sterling house from her window. She was waiting for the heat to break. She was waiting for the great equalization. If this story is already sending a shiver down your spine, make sure to like this video. It helps the algorithm push these stories to more people who need to hear them. We're just getting started. By the time the sun went down on June 22nd, the humidity was at a breaking point. The Sterling parents had left for their gala in the city, leaving the twins alone for the night. They invited Elena over, just like they always did. They thought it was just another night of drinking lemonade by the pool and talking about the future. They didn't know that for Elena Vance, the future had already been cancelled. The clock on the kitchen wall in the Sterling house read 9 o'clock when Elena Vance walked through the back gate. She carried a black nylon backpack slung over one shoulder. To any neighbor watching, it looked like a standard teenage sleepover. But inside that bag was a second set of dark clothing and the black-handled utility knife. The heat was oppressive. Maya and Chloe were already in the pool, the water a shimmering turquoise under the outdoor floodlights. The sound of the pool filter hummed a steady, white noise that covered the sound of the approaching storm. Elena sat on the edge of the concrete deck, dangling her feet in the water. She turned on the portable stereo she had brought. The volume was high, the industrial beat of the music thudding against the brick walls of the house. "It is so hot," Maya said, splashing water toward Elena. "I feel like I am breathing soup." Elena didn't laugh. She watched the way the light hit Maya's face. She thought about the micro-cassette tape. She thought about the word suffocating. Before we get into the details of what happened next, I want to pause for a second. What time is it where you are right now? Is it late? Is it light out? Let me know in the comments. Sometimes these stories hit differently depending on the time of day. The minutes ticked toward midnight. The storm was closer now, the sky flickering with silent heat lightning. Elena suggested they play a game they hadn't played since they were children, a breath-holding contest in the shallow end. It was a simple, innocent suggestion. Maya went under first. While Maya was submerged, Elena looked at Chloe. Chloe was looking at the sky, her eyes closed, enjoying the first few drops of rain that were beginning to fall. Elena reached into the black backpack she had kept within arm's reach on the pool deck. The attack was not like a movie. There was no slow motion. It was a frantic, wet struggle. Because they were in the water, the twins' movements were heavy and hampered. The splashing drowned out the initial cries. Elena worked with a terrifying, cold precision. She didn't scream. She didn't even look angry. According to the medical examiner's report later, her face was likely as calm as the water. Maya was gone first. Chloe, however, was a fighter. Despite the trauma, despite the blood loss, she managed to scramble out of the pool while Elena was entangled with Maya's flailing arms. This is where the story takes that turn that still haunts the Oakhaven Police Department. Chloe Sterling, dripping red and translucent water, dragged herself through the sliding glass doors and into the kitchen. She reached for the phone. She dialed Elena's house. Imagine that for a second. You are dying at the hands of your best friend, and your brain reverts to the only safety it has ever known. You call for the mother of the person who is killing you. The phone in the Vance house rang 4 times. Elena's mother, heavily sedated by her nightly sleep medication, never woke up. Chloe collapsed on the linoleum just as Elena stepped into the kitchen, the black-handled knife still in her hand. "To thou, 200 de South as 9. By 2 o'clock in the morning, the storm was in full force. Elena Vance had been busy. She had changed into the dark clothing she brought in her bag. She had taken a black leather jacket, the one she had stolen from the thrift shop 3 days earlier, and laid it out on the counter. She picked up the phone. This was the moment she had practiced in her diary. 911, what is your emergency? Elena's voice broke perfectly. They are in the pool. Someone hurt them. There is so much blood. Please, God, help me. The first officer on the scene was a man named Miller. He found Elena huddled in the corner of the porch, shaking, her hair plastered to her forehead. She pointed toward the back fence. "A man?" she sobbed. A tall man in a leather jacket. He jumped the fence. He had a mask. I hid. I hid in the pool house. I heard them screaming and I couldn't do anything. For the next 48 hours, Oakhaven was a town under siege. The local news ran segments every hour about the Oakhaven slasher. Parents were terrified. The police set up roadblocks. They were looking for a ghost in a leather jacket, while the real killer was sitting in a police station drinking apple juice and being comforted by victim advocates. This case is a perfect example of how the person closest to you can be the most dangerous. If you find this breakdown compelling, please share this video on your social media. Word of mouth is how we grow, the Justice Minute, and keep these stories alive. But Detective Sarah Jenkins wasn't satisfied. Jenkins had been on the force for 15 years. She had seen prowler cases before. Usually, a prowler leaves a trail. They leave a broken gate, a footprint in the mud, a scent for the K9 units. But the Sterling backyard was a fortress of wet grass and locked gates. Then there was the blood. Jenkins looked at the photos of Elena from the night of the crime. Elena claimed she had been hiding under a bench in the pool house. If she was under a bench, she should have been shielded from the direct spray of the struggle. But the lab results on her original shirt, the one she was wearing when the police arrived, showed high-velocity impact spatter. In 1994, bloodstain pattern analysis was becoming a powerful tool. The spots on Elena's sleeves weren't transfer stains from trying to help her friends. They were mist stains, the kind that only happens if you are standing within 3 feet of the source at the moment of impact. Elena Vance wasn't a witness. She was the epicenter. The investigation proceeded to the Vance house on July 5th. Elena was at the kitchen table eating cereal when the detectives walked in with the search warrant. Her father stood in the corner, his face pale, unable to comprehend why his daughter was being treated like a suspect. They found the diary first. It was tucked inside a hollowed-out stack of magazines. When Jenkins opened the first page, she expected to see high school drama. Instead, she found a roadmap to murder. Elena had drawn diagrams of the pool. She had noted the time it took the Sterling parents to drive to the city. She had even written down a list of things to say to the police. Entry 14. Make sure to mention the mask. It makes him seem less human. People are more afraid of what they can't see. Entry 20. Chloe is the strong one. Hit her first. Maya will freeze. But the most damning piece of evidence wasn't the diary. It was the leather jacket. Elena had told the police the killer was wearing a black leather jacket. During the search, they found a black leather jacket in a trash bag at the bottom of the Sterling laundry basket. Elena had hidden it there, thinking it would look like the killer dropped it. But Detective Jenkins was thorough. She took the jacket to every thrift shop in the county. At a small store 3 towns over, the owner recognized it immediately. That was stolen 2 weeks ago, he said. He showed Jenkins his security footage from that day. It was grainy, black and white, and flickering. But at exactly 3 o'clock on June 10th, 1994, the camera captured a girl walking into the store. She had long brown hair and a quiet, unassuming face. She picked up the black leather jacket, looked at the price tag, and then tucked it under her arm and walked out. The girl in the video was Elena Vance. We are moving into the final, most intense part of the script. Before we reveal what happened in that courtroom, tell me, what is the weather like today where you are? Is it a storm like the one in Oakhaven, or is it clear? Drop a comment below. When the handcuffs clicked around Elena Vance's wrists on July 6, 1994, she didn't scream. She didn't ask why. She simply asked the officer if she could bring her copy of a specific poetry book with her to the station. Her father stood on the porch of the grey house, a broken man, watching his daughter be led away in the back of a cruiser. The town of Oakhaven finally breathed a sigh of relief, but it was a cold comfort. The monster wasn't a stranger in a mask. It was the girl next door. The interrogation lasted 14 hours. Detective Jenkins sat across from Elena in a small, windowless room that smelled like old cigarettes and industrial cleaner. Elena was a wall of silence. She sat with her back straight, her hands folded, her face a mask of absolute calm. Even when Jenkins laid out the photos of the stolen leather jacket and the pages of the diary, Elena didn't flinch. She only spoke once. She looked at the photo of the pool, the turquoise water turned into a murky, dark shade, and she whispered, "It looks much smaller in the picture." Before we get to the trial that gripped the nation in 1995, I have a question for you. If you were on that jury, looking at a 17-year-old girl with no prior record, would you have believed she was capable of this level of planning, or would you have looked for someone else to blame? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. The trial began in November of 1995. By then, the story had grown into a national obsession. The media called it the 94 nightmare. Because Elena was being tried as an adult, the cameras were allowed into the courtroom. The footage shows a girl who looked completely detached from reality. She didn't look like a killer. She looked like a student bored in a long lecture. The prosecution's case was built on 3 pillars: the bloodstain patterns, the diary, and the skin found under Maya Sterling's fingernails. In 1994, DNA testing was the new frontier of justice. It was a slow process, but it was definitive. Maya had fought with everything she had left. During the struggle in the water, she had scratched Elena's arm deeply. The lab confirmed that the tissue found under Maya's nails was a perfect match for the girl sitting at the defense table. But the most emotional moment of the trial happened when the prosecution played the recording from the Sterling kitchen. The courtroom was silent as the sound of the ringing phone filled the air. Then, the voice of Chloe Sterling, gasping, calling out for Mrs. Vance. The jury saw Elena's mother collapse in the gallery. They saw the Sterling father cover his ears. And then, they looked at Elena. She was smiling. It wasn't a wide, maniacal laugh. It was a tiny, satisfied curl of the lip. In that moment, the innocent teenager persona vanished. The jury saw exactly what Detective Jenkins had seen, a girl who had finally achieved the equalization she had written about. We are approaching the end of this journey. If you appreciate the depth we go into with these cases, please make sure you've subscribed to the Justice Minute. We work hard to bring you the truth behind the headlines. Share this video with one friend who loves true crime. It helps the channel more than you know. The defense tried to argue that Elena suffered from a dissociative break. They claimed the pressure of the heat wave and the impending abandonment by the twins had pushed her into a state of temporary insanity. They brought in psychologists who talked about the third twin syndrome and the intense psychological pressure of being the poor friend in a wealthy town. But it didn't work. The diary was too organized. The theft of the jacket was too calculated. The staging of the crime scene was too deliberate. This wasn't a girl who had lost her mind. This was a girl who had found exactly what she wanted, a way to be remembered. On November 14th, 1995, Judge Miller delivered the sentence. 82 years to life. In the state of Oregon at that time, that meant Elena Vance would be over 100 years old before she even had the chance to ask for parole. As she was led out of the courtroom, she paused. She looked directly into the lens of the news camera. She didn't say a word, but she adjusted her hair, making sure she looked exactly like the photos of Maya Sterling that were plastered all over the news. She had stolen their lives, and now she was stealing their image. Today, the town of Oakhaven has changed. The Sterling house was torn down in 1998. The pool was filled with concrete and covered with dirt. Now, it's just an empty lot where the grass grows tall and wild. People don't like to walk past it after dark. Elena Vance is still alive. She is currently inmate number 75420. She spends her time in the prison library. She is reportedly a model prisoner, quiet, polite, and completely alone. She has never expressed a single word of regret. In 2012, a researcher found a final piece of evidence that had been overlooked for nearly 2 decades. It was a letter Elena had written to herself while she was in a holding cell during the trial. "The sun has gone down," she wrote, "and now I am the only thing anyone sees in the dark. They will never forget the summer of '94. They will never forget me. I am finally equal. This case leaves us with a haunting question about the nature of the people we let into our homes. We think we know our friends. We think we know the people across the street. But sometimes, a shadow is just waiting for the right moment to turn out the lights. Thank you for watching this episode of the Justice Minute. What is your final take on Elena Vance? Was she born this way, or did the isolation of Oakhaven create a monster? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your theories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a minute of justice. Until next time, keep your eyes open. You never know who is standing in the shadow.